Hi, I'm Sheldon with US Passport Service Guide, and today we're here to answer your questions, the hundreds of them that you sent in following our Real ID video, and we're here to give you the answers you're looking for. We're going to cut through the noise, we're going to cut through all the nonsense and focus on what you need to be able to fly, enter federal buildings, and generally have the identification you need to be able to travel and go where you need to go following this Real ID deadline on May 7th of this year. All right, so buckle up, let's get into it. One question we got a lot of is, what actually is a Real ID? What counts and what doesn't? Well, first and foremost, a license with that Real ID symbol on it. Could be a black star, could be a gold star, could be an outline of a star in a circle. If you're in California, it's got a bear on it. That's going to work for you. If you live in one of the states that offers an enhanced ID, typically near the borders and places where people frequently have to travel between the US and Canada or US and Mexico, those enhanced IDs will work as well. And then there's the passport book, my personal favorite and the gold standard for identification for US citizens. This will allow you to go anywhere you need to go, domestically or abroad. You can board flights, drive across borders, take a cruise, enter a federal building, all with this guy. Now, a passport card accomplishes a lot of those same goals. However, you cannot use it to fly internationally. It'll allow you to board a flight for a domestic flight, one that starts and ends in the United States. It'll allow you into federal buildings. It'll work exactly like a Real ID symbol on your license would. The same is true for those trusted traveler cards. Global Entry, Sentry, Fast, Nexus. Those are all part of the Western Hemisphere Travel Initiative, WHTI. Those will work as a Real ID substitute as well. And of course, if you have a US military ID issued by the Department of Defense, if you have a foreign passport, if you have a TWIC card, all of those would work as well. So if you have any of those forms of identification, you're good to fly here in the United States. You do not need one of those and a separate Real ID certification on your license. You're good. So skip all this DMV drama, grab your passport or other identification that meets these Real ID standards, and safe travels. So we had a bunch of questions about what's the difference between a Real ID, a passport book, and a passport card. Well, let's break it down for you. A Real ID is a certification on your license. It's usually a star, whether it's a star in a circle, a black star, a gold star, or in California's case, a bear with a star on it. That's going to allow you to board any flight, enter a federal building here in the United States without an issue. A passport card is just a wallet-sized version of the passport book. The only difference is it can't be used in every country. The passport card is only going to get you into Mexico, Canada, the Caribbean, and Bahamas. The passport book is like a Real ID supercharged. It works anywhere, and it works both domestically and abroad, no matter what form of travel you use. A land, a sea, an air border crossing, all fair game with the passport book. Passport card is very similar. It's just not going to get you on an international flight. It'll get you through a TSA checkpoint here in the States though, and for a lot of you, that's your main concern with this Real ID deadline. So if you're not looking to get in line at the DMV or you're having a hard time getting an appointment, a passport card is a fast, cheaper alternative to getting a passport book. There were some questions in the comments of the last video about whether an EDL, an enhanced driver's license, qualifies as Real ID. The answer is yes. If you live in Michigan, Minnesota, New York, Vermont, or Washington, and you have a little flag in the corner of your license, that means you have an enhanced driver's license that allows you to cross between Canada and the United States without having to carry an extra passport or a passport card. It works for Real ID. So if you have an EDL, you're all set. The same is true for the Global Entry, the Nexus, the Sentry, and the Fast WHTI compliant cards. These are meant to also facilitate faster border crossings for people who have to frequently go between the United States and neighboring countries. Not only are they Real ID approved, but they get you that fast TSA pre-check so you can skip some of the security lines next time you have to fly. Bonus! If you happen to have a military or a TWIC card, they work as Real ID too. You just need to know that if you're trying to use them to get into Mexico, they still require a passport book or a passport card. As far as Real ID is concerned though, you're covered. One Real ID question we've been getting a lot is, do kids need a Real ID? Reality? No. Anyone under 18 does not require a Real ID to fly domestically. That's the TSA rule. Now, some airlines may have their own rules for minors that are flying unaccompanied, but you'll have to check with their rules and policies to figure that out for yourself. But as far as Real ID is concerned, kids don't need one. With that Real ID deadline approaching, another question pops up for people who frequently use buses, trains, or other forms of transportation besides flying. Do you need Real ID to get onto one of those? The answer is no. Real ID is an airport-only rule. So, while some of those services will require ID to know who is getting on to their vehicles, it doesn't have to be Real ID compliant. The same is true for things like jury duty, your bank, picking up a prescription at the pharmacy. Those don't have to be Real ID compliant identification cards either. The ID that you have is going to work just fine. Now, I can't predict the future. I can't say that's always going to be the case, but odds are that Real ID requirement is never going to extend beyond the reach that it currently has. If that changes, we'll be sure to let you know. One thing you absolutely have to keep in mind with your Real ID is that even if you got it years ago, if your name has changed, or your appearance has dramatically changed, or your address has changed, you need to update your Real ID. Whatever you're using for Real ID, whether it's a license from the DMV or one of the other documents we've talked about, it needs to display your current address. Once you move, you need to update it, otherwise it's not going to be valid. Now, aesthetic issues, your hair's turned a little bit grayer than it used to be, you have a scar or a cut or a mark or something that wasn't there when you got your original picture taken, don't sweat it. Facial recognition should be able to pick up you as you. That said, if you've had any sort of dramatic reconstructive surgery or major alteration to your facial appearance, you might want to double check and see if you need to get that renewed. If you get married or get a legal name change, you're also going to have to update your Real ID. At the end of the day, the Real ID's purpose is to prove that you are you. That means your name, your address, and what you look like. For those of you planning to use your passport as your Real ID, please make sure you check that expiration date. We recommend renewing 6 to 9 months before your expiration date actually hits. The reason we make that recommendation is there are a lot of countries that require at least 6 months of validity left on your passport before it expires to allow you into their country. You don't want to end up at a border with a passport that should work, only to find out that you missed it by a week or a couple months. Now, if you're just planning on relying on your passport or one of the other documents we talked about as your Real ID substitute, not a problem. It just has to be valid. Once it expires, it's no longer going to work. As with all forms of identification, renew early, skip the stress. But if it turns out you realize you're coming down to the deadline, particularly with a passport, it may be in your best interest to seek out some expediting options. Currently, routine processing time for passports and passport cards is about 4 to 6 weeks, plus an additional 2 weeks on either end if you're not choosing an expedited mailing option. If you need to get that passport sooner, you can get it expedited in 2 to 3 weeks for a $60 additional fee. You still have to account for mailing time though. So if you have a chance to pay for that overnight shipping, do it. You won't regret it. If you need a passport sooner than the next 2 weeks, you can visit a regional passport agency or have a passport expediting service go on your behalf, and you can get that passport as soon as the next 48 hours. For more on that and our top recommendations for a bunch of vetted, high-quality passport expediting services, check out our website, uspassportserviceguide.com, or the links in the description. So here's a quick cheat sheet for you. Passport book, all access, domestic and international, however you travel, that ID will get you where you need to go. Passport card will work largely the same way, it's just not getting you on any international flights. It's also only going to get you into a very select few countries. Real ID allows you to fly stateside, get you into federal buildings, but it's not going to help you at a border crossing. Need an ID fast or have more questions? Check out US Passport Service Guide and we'll be here to help you with anything you need. Drop any additional questions you have in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe and share this with anybody you know who's scrambling here at the last minute to try to get their Real ID situation under control. As always, safe travels.